Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona, and today is a great day. I got today in the mail the rarest and probably one of the most desirable audiophile Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon LPs of all time. This is a disc that I had wanted for about 19 years. Very rare, and it's eluded me the whole time. So when this was announced in 2003, and I'll show it to you, it is the 30th anniversary test pressing. When this was first announced in 2003, test pressings were done at RTI in California. They started making their way to the audiophile review circuit, and the buzz was fantastic. People were talking about how this was the greatest sounding copy of Dark Side of the Moon that they had ever heard. But the way this record was manufactured is they did all the metalwork at RTI in California, and then RTI took the metalwork and sent it to Holland to Record Industry for the commercial release. The buzz was big. You know, I remember hearing about it in forums or news bulletins. It was probably almost pre-forum, but it was like news bulletins. People were talking about it. The buzz was real. When the commercial release came out, it kind of didn't have the same buzz anymore. It was like a lukewarm reception almost. And it seemed like a lot of people were pinning that on the fact that the final product from Record Industry just wasn't to the same caliber of the test pressing that had been circulating from RTI. A friend of mine recently emailed Kevin Gray, who speculated that maybe 10 or less of these things were ever manufactured or exist, and that was in 2003. So how many of these things are out there? Well, if 10 or less were made in 2003, we got to assume at the most it's 10, possibly less. Things happen. Fires, floods, hurricanes. Don't know exactly how many there are, but let's go with the number 10. So I got this thing. I was waiting for this mind-boggling revelation. It was Kevin Gray's come out and said it. Many people have said that this thing sounds great. So today was kind of a little bit of a mini shootout video for me. Let me tell you a little bit about the backstory of this. This actually was on Discogs. It popped up on Discogs. The guy wanted like $5,000. It's like, man, for a record I wanted forever, I just couldn't see spending $5,000 for a test pressing to something I already had a production copy of. How much better could the test pressing be? $5,000? Ooh, steep. I emailed the guy and offered him, I think it was like $2,000, 3 months ago. And he's like, no, I've got this listed for $5,000. I'm not selling it to you for two. And I'm like, you know, it's never sold for anywhere even near $2,000. I think this is a fair price. He wasn't interested. A couple months went by. I noticed he had been lowering his price. I think it was at $2,600. When I shot him the email, hey, would you take $2,000? He's like, Mike, I would love to take $2,000. So time changed his mind a little bit. It came with an original letter, and I don't want to really tell you guys. He redacted it. Essentially, he put sticky labels with blue marker over it that I just peeled off and could see all the names. But I'm not going to tell you guys, essentially, I can't read it to you because I don't want to sell anybody out, because there's a lot of names in here you guys would recognize. And I don't want to get anybody in trouble, because I think the terms of him having it were those names were supposed to be redacted. And he didn't do the best job, but I'll do it for him. But it's pretty cool because it talks about the lineage of it, who did it, kind of how things got done, and then how this person obtained it. So it's a letter. I kept it in the actual jacket. You know, I store this just like I store all my records. But give me a second. I'll tell you guys how it sounds. And then I'll compare it to the 30 copies-ish that I have on the floor. About half of my Dark Side ones. I probably have, I don't know, 60 of these things at this point in time. But I kind of will talk about it a little bit. But yeah, I thought you guys might like to see it. This has got to be hands down the rarest copy of Dark Side of the Moon in existence. You know, the RTI test pressing. So very cool. Again, very elusive. How does it sound? Well, it doesn't actually sound that much different than the 30th anniversary. And I think most people would find it hard to differentiate between the two. The very first thing I thought when I had it in my hands was, when I started listening to it, I was like, no, the RTI seems a little bit louder, a little bit punchier. How is that possible with the same metalwork? So the first thing I do, I brought out my old trusty sound level meter, which I use for a lot of my shootouts to get a, to get a dB reading. It's the same. So that was just kind of a manifestation in my mind. I like to do it on one turntable for that reason, because I can go back, I can volt it, I can volume match with the dB meter. I used to have two turntables, but in my system, I found two turntables a little more difficult because no two cartridges are alike. A lot of your premium cartridges are hand wound, and if the guy winding the cartridge puts an extra wind on it, it might run a little hotter. If he does a little less winding, it might run a little bit softer. So the voltage output's approximate, but never exactly the same from cartridge to cartridge. So I like to do it in this fashion. That was an hallucination. It seemed to me, and I think this is just a manifestation of the fact that it came early on. If they only made 10 of them off the stamper, you got to assume this is 1 through 10 of the copies that came off of the stamper. It seemed to have a little bit upper end, a little better upper end. This is significantly quieter, which is a much better overall presentation of the record. There's a lot of quiet parts on Dark Side of the Moon, and the last thing you want is a really noisy copy. I'm not saying the 30th anniversary is really noisy, but you don't realize how much quieter it can be until you have the 30th, until you have the RTI pressing. I will say one thing I would love is, man, how fantastic would it be if they cracked out these, this RTI metalwork, or the metalwork that was, plated at RTI, and put it on super vinyl. That would be something. That would be really something. Or better yet, maybe if we just got an audio file, maybe a UHQR of the album, that would be something. But interesting, it was cut from the original master. I think it was the Dolby, or was it the? It was an EQ'd master. I believe it was done by Doug Sachs and Kevin Gray from tape on Doug Sachs tube gear. That's kind of the original deal with the 30th anniversary. The last audiophile presentation of the album there was. And what was funny about it is that, going back in time, remembering this, that wasn't really considered a audiophile record at the time. But one of my favorite bands of all time, one of the greatest albums of all time, might be the best album of all time. One of my top 5. I go between LA Woman, Dark Side of the Moon. There's a few that I like, go back and forth of. But, let me run you guys through some of my copies, some of my more favorite copies. The 30th anniversary. Did a shootout video of this album. The 30th anniversary. I want to say at the time when I did the shootout was number 3. I'm not saying that this RTI test pressing is worth thousands of dollars more than that, but it is slightly better. A little bit better upper end, a little bit better surface noise, less surface noise. A little bit sharper, almost like my 30th had been played maybe 100 times. Like the difference between maybe a fresh record versus one that's been played a good amount. It's tough to quantify that, but it was just a little bit crisper. But it was so minuscule, I would never say to anybody, you need to go out and spend thousands. I wanted that to be the case. I find audio reviewers, people that have records, a lot of times they want to justify their purchases by saying, it's the greatest thing ever. I paid a bunch of money for it, and it's amazing. Just trust me, I'll tell you. I want that to be the case, but we're talking minor. The laws of diminishing returns definitely comes into effect here. So not something I would necessarily seek out. But me, I look at it a different way because I'm going to show you here, I'm a collector of this album. So I got all kinds of copies. What is this? This is the Bernie Grundman 40th anniversary. It's okay. I talk about these at great length in my shootout videos. Oh boy. Look at this. This is going to be the most cherry, minty 30th original Dark Side of the Moon you're ever going to see. Very, very few copies came with shrink. This is an original UK A2, B2, blue triangle, mint in every way with the original hype sticker and the shrink. I almost thought it was fake until I started doing some research and find out that some of them actually did come in shrink. How rare this is, it's rare. Complete everything, every bell, everything in there. Posters, the whole nine are in there. The Pro Use, one of the Japanese pressings, I'm not super down on like others. Again, I'm going to link my previous shootout video right here up in the corner. If you want to watch it, I talk about these things at great length. But Pro Use, this was an audiophile Japanese series. This is a really hard to find one. And I dig the alternate mixes. I dig the quadraphonic mixes of all these Pink Floyd albums of the time. Wish You Were Here, Dark Side of the Moon. This is the CD4. This is a really Japanese, really, really a rare copy. Not one you see very often. Oh, the UHQR, the rarest, and only because it's the most desirable, because they made 5,000 of all of these. But this is the one you see the least because it's the one that people are the least likely to sell. You're going to have a much easier time finding Respighi. Pines Rome, Earl Klug, you'll find those. Holst the Planets. This one's a lot harder to find. I've got both iterations of the Mobile Fidelity Dark Side of the Moon. People have gone on record saying that this is a fantastic sounding record. I do not believe it is a fantastic sounding record. Two variations of it. The very first pressing, which has the different font. The italic font is on the second pressing of this album. Got both of those. Both of these I actually opened from sealed, part of a massive sealed collection of Mobile Fidelity records I bought years ago. What do I got here? It sucks because I didn't realize I didn't have the Obi for this. This is the second Japanese pressing. I've sold multiple copies of this recently on Whatnot, not realizing I needed to snag an Obi for my copy at the house. The EMI 100 from the 90s. This is the Japanese pressing from the Bernie Grumman cut, and there's nothing Japanese about this other than the fact that they probably printed this Obi over in Japan and then took the normal record that was pressed. I think, where were these pressed? Maybe in Europe, maybe Germany, Optimal Palace. I'd have to look, but they essentially imported the record, slapped the Obi on it, and charged a bunch of money. So yeah, not like Sony Japan, for instance, who's making their own records now in Japan. At the time, there was no vinyl production going on in Japan. What is this? Oh my God. Some of these I wonder, what do I got this for? Some country. I have no clue off the top of my head. It actually doesn't list the country. Oh man. It's actually cool because the hype sticker is printed on the actual jacket. That's not a sticker. No country on that whatsoever. I probably talk about this in my video. This is Johannesburg. Oh, look at that. African pressing, right? This is a quadraphonic. Is this Australian quadraphonic? No, this is Yugoslavia. I doubt that's actually even quadraphonic. We got a Yugoslavian press. This is cool because there's a little bit different cover design here. This has, awful. Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon on the cover. This is on, this is Korea. This is on the purple Capital label. Talk about, again, most of the sound quality on these in that video, so I won't rehash it. What do we got here? Czechoslovakia. I've got other copies. I got about 25,000 records I haven't actually purged out of their boxes and funneled into the main collection. This is probably just a A4, A5, A6, kind of a third or fourth pressing possibly. UK pressing of Dark Side. I've got multiple copies. This is an original Japanese first pressing. I believe maybe the only country that ever did the blue triangle like the original UK. What do we got here? This is a UK quadraphonic. We've got, let's see, this is a Capital. I'm guessing this is a slate. I'd have to pull it open and check it out inside. Different mastering engineers, Los Angeles Capital Pressing. Oh boy, I got 3 more of these somewhere, but just super clean in the shrink with the hype sticker. This is a second pressing. You can tell the second pressing because the text goes farther up on the label, as opposed to the first pressing. I don't know if you can see this, but the text only goes up to the bottom of the triangle. So like a nice, really clean first pressing. Kind of the UK first pressing. I had a couple blue triangles in the house. What do we got here? Is that the Wally mastering? I got many different. This is a different later Capital pressing. But yeah, figured I'd share that with you guys. If you're a collector of records, it's cool to see that. There's just no doubt about it. Actually, it's cool to see all this stuff. This is a fantastic Dark Side of the Moon collection, if I don't say so myself. I wish I could get through the rest of those boxes and get them all in the same place. It'd be a little bit cooler to show you guys. But yeah, it's so cool having this. So on a side note, I'll tell you a little bit of a story with this. The guy shipped it today. USPS lost the damn package. It went missing for 2 days. Go on their website, delay in shipping. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. 19 years I waited for this record, and the effing post office is gonna lose it. I'm just, oh man. But I thought to myself, you know, I deal with this all the time with customers. Things get misrouted all the time. They almost always make it there. Have patience. So I was like, the emails that we normally send out at the store, I was like having to tell myself that in my mind. Relax, Mike, it'll pop up. Where does it show up? This is coming out of California. It populates in Denver. I'm like, what? Then Denver sat on the package for a couple of days. So it was like 2 or 3 days in LA area. I think it was somewhere in California. To a couple 2 or 3 days in Denver. To then, I think Saturday it made its way over here to Phoenix. And then lo and behold, it got delivered to me on Monday. But yeah, there it is. The rarest Dark Side of the Moon in the world. Only 10 RTI test pressings. I'm guessing there might be some UK test pressings that might even be rare, but who knows? I would think maybe they made more than 10 of them. Do more than 10 of them exist? I don't know. But that was back in the day when vinyl was a lot more common. I would think a little bit more on the test pressings, a little more test pressings would get made. I don't know. We're going to go with the rarest Dark Side of the Moon vinyl record in the world. All right, guys, beingroove.com. Until next time.